Hi, my name is Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the shock resignation of moderate Conservative MP Chris Skidmore. And this is not simply yet another Tory resignation to throw on the pile. He's not resigning because there's an investigation about to blow up. He's not resigning because he engaged in sleaze or corruption. What we have here is a resignation on a matter of principle. He's unable to support the government's attack on net zero. So now there's going to be an extra by-election coming up. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, former Energy Minister Chris Skidmore, he announced yesterday evening that he would be resigning as an MP as soon as Parliament sits again after the weekend. He says it's because he cannot support the upcoming bill being presented by the government, which would legislate for automatic North Sea oil and gas licensing in effect. It's a bill which in practice doesn't really do anything at all. A waste of parliamentary time to lay what the Tories think is a trap for Labour. Because under the Conservatives, the law isn't needed because if they want to grant a load of extra licences, they will do, just like they did last year. Under Labour, who have committed to not granting any new licences, they'll just repeal or amend the law in order to maintain their promise. The Tories perhaps think that when Labour get ready to repeal the law, they can attack them for attacking our energy security. But this is a nonsense. Labour have been really happy to be very, very clear about where they stand on licensing, so it will cause them no problems. Just waste parliamentary time. But the intention of the bill is, as Chris Skidmore says, to increase the number of new licences granted, to increase the amount of fossil fuels being burned. Now, as a keen advocate of net zero, he is unable to vote in favour of the bill. He says he's resigning because he cannot support a government who behaves like this and will be resigning the party whip in order to be free of party political allegiance. Now, in other words, he doesn't want to rebel against the government by voting against them and expect to maintain the whip, so he's surrendering it. But his letter also indicated that he felt his local party representatives were in support of Sunak's anti-net zero bill. In other words, there seems to be a bit of a local friction there. So he's not simply surrendering the whip, he's standing down as an MP as well, meaning that Sunak is faced with yet another by-election which Labour will win. Skidmore's constituency of Kingswood is going to be split up savagely in the next election, so it's basically not going to exist in any form. So whoever wins this seat will only be keeping it for a short while. Doesn't mean to say they won't be an MP after the election, because they may well be a candidate for one of the new constituencies. Part of it's going to end up being in Jacob Rees-Mogg's constituency. And I'm guessing Sunak will move the writ for this by-election very quickly, so expect it to take place on the same day as the Wellingborough by-election. As with last year, I think it's probably safe to say Sunak will have by-elections take place as soon as possible in order to reduce the amount of time opposition parties can campaign. Because I'll bet you anything, Labour are currently moving to Kingswood right now as well. You know, you don't have to wait for the by-election to be called. As soon as you know it's happening, you start campaigning. Especially important as Reform UK have decided that they're going for it in Wellingborough. Sunak may well feel holding it on the same day poses Reform UK a bit of a challenge. Do they try and go hard at both of these constituencies, splitting their efforts, or do they concentrate on just Wellingborough? Because Kingswood was a slight Leave voting area, a little bit more than the national average. And it was one where UKIP came third in the famous 2015 election where UKIP did quite well. But if Reform UK had to choose one of the two seats to campaign hard in, for fear of splitting resources, they would choose Wellingborough. So for Sunak, it would make sense to have Kingswood on the same day as Wellingborough. It forces Reform UK to either split their resources or to ignore one. But this move represents more than just another unwelcome by-election for Sunak. It's more than yet another day where he has to try and engineer something to keep a double Labour win off the front pages that weekend. Skidmore could just have abstained on the vote. He could have voted against it, regardless of what his local party think, on the basis that he would be voting in support of the manifesto he campaigned under in 2019. Because every single Tory MP who votes in favour of this bill on Monday is breaking a manifesto commitment. If they won their seat in 2019, granted there were a few Tory MPs who won their seats since 2019, in theory, they're not bound by that manifesto. But the ones who won in 2019 absolutely are. But Sunak and Johnson have both had them vote to break manifesto promises in the past anyway. But an MP is always justified in refusing to go along with that. Skidmore has not chosen to do that. He's not voting against it, presumably because, or he's at least not, I suppose he might stand down as an MP after voting against it. I don't actually know what his intention is for Monday, but he is standing down next week as an MP, presumably because he doesn't want to just remain as an independent MP, triggering a fight with his local party. He's not just abstaining. He abstained for Liz Truss's fracking bill, the one that eventually brought her down in 2022. He's obviously resigning rather than abstaining because he thinks it can highlight the issue more effectively. You know, he's stepping down at the next election anyway, so he's only leaving Parliament a few months early. And a resignation is more newsworthy than an abstention. If he'd have announced he's going to abstain on Monday, I mean, that wouldn't have been major news. On net zero, Sunak insists he's still committed, but he has cancelled quite a lot of net zero policies and he hasn't replaced them with alternatives. Not that there really is an alternative to reducing the amount of carbon being thrown into the air. Carbon capture not able to compete at the moment, if it ever can, and if it were worthwhile, such is the state of the climate emergency, a serious government would do both. I don't know how much of a political impact this resignation will have on the Tories or their election strategy, but it is very unhelpful for Sunak because the public, especially key swing voters in the centre, whom the Conservatives are largely ignoring, they are conscious of the need to deal with the climate emergency. Any event which raises with them the prospect that the Tories are just doing the bidding of oil and gas companies is going to weaken the Tories in the centre. And yet another by-election loss for Sunak is going to pile more pressure on the man who reckons he has the party on course to win the election. Because it's like when you look at polls, you can say, oh yeah, polls could be wrong, polls could be wrong. Yeah, but voting results, no. That's actually the people voting. Boris Johnson had a net loss of 3 seats to by-elections. He lost 4, but he gained 1, and then he retained a few. Rishi Sunak has already lost a net total of 4. He has lost 4 to Boris Johnson's 4. So at the moment, they're head-to-head on the total number of by-election losses, but Rishi Sunak hasn't gained any, so it is a net loss of 4. Labour are going to take Wellingborough and Kingswood. And then they will take Blackpool South when that's confirmed as well. But they are going to take Wellingborough and Kingswood. That by-election is almost certainly going to be next month. Rishi Sunak will then have been on 6 by-election losses. So the Boris Johnson fans will certainly be able to make use of that. The problem with by-elections for Sunak is that if they keep happening, there's a trickle effect, just like there was last year. They're a constant reminder that the Tories are on their way out. Then, if the Tories don't trigger the election for May, it just makes it all the easier for Labour to paint the Conservatives as clinging on to power against the will of the people and Rishi Sunak as a squatter in Downing Street. Because it's all right, Rishi Sunak say, no, I'm not squatting, I've got lots of things to do. You can just say the people don't want you doing them. That's why they keep voting for us in Tory seats. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.